Have you ever created an assumption in your mind and found out later you were completely off the mark? I was walking through the living room one day and my teenage son was sitting on the couch. And I thought to myself, why is he just sitting there? He has not unloaded the dishwasher. He has not done his math assignment. I'm thinking he has gotten so irresponsible and lazy. That was the story I told myself. What did I say? I said, Mitchell, said, why are you just sitting there? Have you unloaded the dishwasher? And what about that math assignment that I doubt is finished yet? He looked up at me, trying to hold back his annoyance. He said, Mom, he said, when you got home from work, I told you I was stuck on my math assignment, and you told me you would help me later. And unloading the dishwasher isn't my chore this week. That's my sister's. Oops. Not only had I been a poor listener, but I completely created what I call a story. And I talk about in Pebbles in My Shoe, I talk about this process, this natural phenomenon of creating stories. And Brene Brown calls it creating stories in her book, Rising Strong. And she quotes a neurologist by the name of Robert Burton, who says that it's a natural phenomenon in our brains to want closure. When there's something that isn't clear to us or something that we don't really have awareness and closure to, we want closure, and we get dopamine, this happy, feel-good chemical is released in our brain when we get closure. So when something happens that we don't quite understand, we make up a story. And when we get closure, when we come to a conclusion, even if it's the wrong conclusion, we get a little shot of dopamine in our brain, a little shot of feel good, like a sense of accomplishment. It doesn't even have to be a right conclusion. It just has to be a conclusion. And when we come to that conclusion, we feel settled. But the problem is, then we start acting like these things are true. And that's what gets us in trouble. Because the root of almost every conflict is the assumption of negative intention. And when we assume that someone has negative intention, we start acting as if that story is true. So if we can untangle what I call truth or facts from stories, we can start with facts, rely on facts, but hold our stories lightly and ask questions, be curious. Go to somebody and say, this is the story I'm making up. What do you make of this? Or what's your perspective? I want to hear from you. And when we can hold our stories lightly, when we can be curious about another person's perspective, we are going to divert conflict and be in a better place because we're treating our stories lightly and we're getting curious about another person's perspective. That's material, that insight can help remove a pebble from your shoe and help you walk with more freedom.